Okay, let's identify some variables. We'll look at a graph, and then we'll look at a sample experiment. Reading the graph, if we read the graph, we can start by looking at our x-axis, which tells us hours of battery use, and our y-axis over here, which gives us the voltage in volts. And we see the title of our graph, Flashlights, Medium Drain Device. And we do have 3 different items graphed here, but the key to the right lets us know that the red happens to be Duracell battery, the green is an Energizer battery, and the blue is a Panasonic battery. So we want to identify the independent and dependent variables. Well, if you remember what you learned in class, the independent variable is what's being tested. So if we look to figure out what are they testing here, we see they're actually testing the number of hours that you can use the battery. Since we're looking at a graph, you also learned the trick that your independent variable is located on the x-axis. Therefore, our independent variable happens to be the hours of battery use. The dependent variable, that's what's being measured. So what are they actually measuring here? They're measuring the volts. They want to know the voltage in volts. So our dependent variable happens to be the voltage in volts. Now, if we look at this experiment, there's a hypothesis that states fertilizer will enhance tree growth. And we have 4 questions. What is the independent variable? Well, we see that we have 2 groups, Group A and Group B. Again, the independent variable is what is being tested. In this case, fertilizer is being tested, therefore it is the independent variable. What is the dependent variable? Again, the dependent variable is what's going to be measured in the experiment. Well, in this experiment, we know that the hypothesis says fertilizer will enhance tree growth, so we know that fertilizer is being tested, the independent variable. What are they going to measure? The tree growth. So the dependent variable would be the amount of tree growth. Now, we're looking at a controlled experiment. Therefore, we should be able to identify the control group along with the experimental group. The control group is the group that's not being tested. It's under normal conditions. So the group here between A and B that's not being tested, that's under normal conditions, happens to be Group B. That's our control group. We're going to compare the experimental group to this to find out if there is indeed a difference. So the experimental group is the group that is being tested, and that happens to be Group A. So Group A is our experimental group because that's the group that we have added the variable to. In this case, our variable happens to be fertilizer because that's what we're testing. And keep in mind, when you have a controlled experiment, when you conduct those, you can only have one variable. Only one variable because you can only test one thing at a time.